Why God let them hurt you, the truth no one told you. There are moments in life when the pain someone caused you feels heavier than anything you've ever carried. You replay the words they said, the betrayal they did, the silence they left you with. And somewhere inside a quiet question forms. Why did God let this happen? Why didn't He stop them? Why didn't He protect me from the very people I trusted? I know you've tried to move on, tried to forget, tried to pretend it didn't shape you. But the truth is, it did. Their actions reached deeper than your skin. It touched your confidence, your peace, your identity, and even your trust in God. And now you stand in a place where pain has become a sort of teacher. One you didn't ask for, one you didn't want, but one God allowed anyway. When we talk about God permitting hurt, most people imagine a distant God who watches suffering without concern. But the God of the Bible is nothing like that. He watches every tear, hears every hidden cry, and sees every injustice long before it reaches you. His silence was not absence. His stillness was not neglect. Sometimes God allows the wound because the wound itself carries a message, a correction, a redirection, or a revelation that comfort could never give. There is a depth inside you that only pain could unlock. There are strengths inside you that only pressure could awaken. There are truths God wanted you to see that only brokenness could bring to the surface. And even when the hurt felt senseless, God was not improvising. He was shaping you through every moment you didn't understand. So before we walk through the reasons, pause and breathe for a moment. You survived something real. You endured something that could have destroyed you. And the God who allowed it is the same God who is about to use it, not to punish you, not to diminish you, but to prepare you, to elevate you, and to reveal a version of you that could only exist on the other side of a wound. Your story is not about who hurt you. It's about who you become because God let it happen. Number 1. God allowed it to reveal what you couldn't see. There are layers of truth in your life that only pain can uncover. Sometimes God lets people hurt you because there are things happening behind the scenes that you were never going to notice while everything felt comfortable. Pain has a way of pulling back the curtain. It exposes motives, reveals hearts, and shines a light on things you couldn't see when you were busy trusting the wrong voices. You might have thought that person truly cared. You might have believed that relationship was genuine, that friendship was loyal, that environment was safe, that opportunity was from God. But the moment pressure arrived, the moment your heart became vulnerable, their true natures surfaced. Betrayal isn't just an attack. It's a revelation. Rejection isn't just a wound. It's an unveiling. When someone shows you who they really are through pain, God is allowing you to see truth without pretending. Think of Judas. Jesus knew who he was sitting at the table with. The other disciples didn't. Judas looked like a follower, talked like a follower, walked like a follower. But his heart was moving in a completely different direction. Had Jesus never allowed the moment of betrayal to unfold, the hidden motive would have stayed hidden, and the disciples would have never learned what danger looked like when it wore a familiar face. Sometimes God lets someone hurt you because you were blind to the danger they represented. You couldn't see their envy. You couldn't see their selfishness. You couldn't see the spiritual influence behind them. You couldn't see how deeply they were affecting your peace, your focus, your calling. So, God allowed the situation to break open, not to break you, but to reveal them. And not just them. Pain exposes you too. It shows you where your boundaries were too low, where your discernment was too soft, where your expectations were too high, where your heart trusted beyond its capacity. Pain is a harsh mirror, but it is an honest one. When the hurt happened, you didn't just lose someone. You gained sight. You gained clarity. You gained understanding you didn't have before. God didn't allow it to destroy you. He allowed it so you could finally see truth without filters. The wound was real, but so was the revelation. Number 2. God allowed it to strengthen what was weak inside you. There are parts of your character, your faith, and your emotional life that cannot grow in comfort. Growth rarely happens in peaceful seasons. The truth is, the strongest parts of you were born in moments you didn't ask for. The moments that stretched you, pressured you, and forced you to face the parts of yourself you didn't know were fragile. When someone hurt you, it didn't just break your heart. It exposed the places where your strength was still underdeveloped. Maybe you realized you depended too much on validation. Maybe your identity leaned too heavily on people's approval. Maybe your emotions were easily shaken. Maybe your confidence was quick to collapse. These weaknesses weren't obvious to you until the hurt came along and touched them. And God allowed the pain because He knew you needed strengthening, not in the areas you proudly display, but in the areas you quietly avoid. Faith grows by resistance. Patience grows by pressure. Wisdom grows by wounds. Discernment grows by disappointment. Courage grows by confronting things you feared. Even your prayer life deepens when pain pushes you to seek God more honestly. Look at Joseph, the betrayal by his brothers, the lies in Egypt, the prison years. None of those were fair. But every unfair moment developed something inside him that comfort never could. His leadership grew in the pit. His integrity grew in the temptation. His humility grew in the prison. His wisdom grew in the waiting. God allowed each painful chapter because Joseph needed every lesson to stand in the palace later. And the same is true for you. The hurt you experienced wasn't wasted time. It was training. You were being refined, stretched, strengthened, prepared. God was toughening your spirit so the next season wouldn't break you. He was solidifying your identity so people's opinions wouldn't control you. He was expanding your endurance so you wouldn't collapse under the weight of your calling. Strength doesn't come from ease. It comes from surviving what was meant to break you. It comes from trusting God when you had every reason to run. It comes from choosing healing when bitterness felt easier. You are stronger now, not because of the pain itself, but because God stood with you through it, shaping you with every tear and lifting you with every prayer. What was weak in you has now become the foundation of who you're becoming. Number 3, God allowed it to push you toward your calling. There are seasons when comfort becomes a cage. You stay in places you've outgrown, cling to relationships that drain you, or settle into patterns that shrink you. Not because they are good for you, but because they are familiar. And sometimes God has to allow a painful push to move you into a destiny you would never choose on your own. Think about it. Before the hurt happened, you were comfortable. You had a plan. You had people. You had a sense of control. But the moment they wounded you and they walked away, betrayed you, rejected you, or mistreated you, everything inside you shifted. Suddenly you weren't meant to stay where you were. Suddenly the place that once felt safe became a place you could no longer remain. And as painful as that shift was, God used it to redirect your entire path. Look at Moses. He lived in Pharaoh's palace with every privilege imaginable, but he wasn't called to rule Egypt. He was called to set Israel free. God had to shake him out of comfort so he could step into calling. The pain of running into the wilderness was not punishment. It was repositioning. Without that painful transition, Moses would have died a prince instead of becoming a deliverer. Or look at David. Before he became king, he spent years running from Saul. Did God love David? Absolutely. Did he allow the unjust persecution? Yes, because every battle, every cave, every lonely night was training David for a throne he didn't even know he was walking toward. In your life, the hurt they caused didn't just break something. It moved something. It pushed you pray differently, think differently, grow differently. It made you uncomfortable enough to let go of places God had been trying to separate you from. Pain became the divine tool that released you from plans that were too small and led you toward a purpose much bigger than what you imagined. Sometimes the people who hurt you are actually the ones who unknowingly push you toward your destiny. Their rejection becomes God's redirection. Their mistreatment becomes God's motivation. Their absence creates the space you needed to discover who you are. Without them, you weren't being abandoned, you were being aligned. You weren't losing your place, you were being released into your purpose. And the path you are on today, even if it began with pain, is taking you closer to the person God designed you to become. Number 4. God allowed it to cut off what could not go with you. There are people, habits, environments, and attachments that feel permanent. Yet God never intended them to follow you into your next season. Some connections are only meant for a chapter, not the whole book, but because your heart loved hard, trusted deeply, or hoped sincerely, you would have never let them go on your own. So God allowed the hurt, not to damage you, but to separate you from what was quietly limiting your future. We often think losing someone means something went wrong, but sometimes losing someone is the only way something can go right. When God is preparing you for a higher calling, He will not allow dead weight to cling to your destiny. He will not let your future be built on connections that are weak, unstable, unfaithful, or spiritually dangerous. And because you didn't see what He saw, He allowed something to break that you would have otherwise forced yourself to hold together. Think of Abraham and Lot. They journeyed together for years, but there came a moment when God allowed tension to rise between them, not because the relationship was bad, but because the purposes over their lives were different. Abraham could not enter the promise with Lot attached to him. Separation wasn't betrayal, it was divine necessity. So God allowed conflict to create distance, and that distance opened the door to Abraham's next season. Or think of Jesus clearing out the crowd before raising Jairus' daughter. He put people out of the room, not because He hated them, but because they did not have the faith to enter the miracle. Some people are not meant to walk into your resurrection. They can't handle where God is taking you. In your life, God allowed someone to hurt you because their heart wasn't aligned with your calling. Their intentions couldn't withstand the weight of your purpose. Their presence would have corrupted your progress. Their influence was pulling you backward while God was trying to move you forward. The separation you didn't want became the protection you didn't know you needed. Yes, the breakup was painful, the betrayal was sharp, the friendship ending felt unfair. But look at you now, healing, growing, becoming, awakening. God cut off what could not go with you so that you could finally step into the place He prepared for you. Not everyone can walk where you're going. Not everyone can carry what you will carry. And God loves you too much to let the wrong people have access to the right future. Number 5. God allowed it to break the illusion of control. There comes a moment in every believer's life when God gently and sometimes painfully removes the illusion that we are in control. We like to think we can manage everything: relationships, outcomes, people's intentions, our own future. We convince ourselves that if we love hard enough, give enough, pray enough, or hold on tight enough, things will turn out the way we expect. But life has a way of revealing that some outcomes are not in our hands, no matter how pure our heart is. When someone hurt you, part of what shattered wasn't just your trust. It was the false belief that you could control what people did, how they thought, or who they chose to be. And God allowed that moment, not to make you feel powerless, but to show you where your heart was, depending on human strength instead of His sovereignty. Pain has a way of making the truth impossible to ignore. You can't control people's loyalty. You can't control their honesty. You can't control their maturity, their intentions, or their spiritual condition. You can't control who stays, who leaves, who loves you, or who misuses you. You can't control outcomes that only God is meant to hold. Look at Peter. He loved Jesus deeply, more than he loved anyone else. But during the trial, Peter denied Him 3 times. No amount of friendship, loyalty, or passion could prevent the moment Jesus already knew would happen. Because sometimes God allows a painful reality to break our dependency on human reliability and push us into a deeper, truer dependence on Him. Or think of Job. He lived righteously, faithfully, generously, and still experienced loss he never imagined. It wasn't because he did anything wrong. It was because God was teaching him something bigger. That faith isn't built on control, it's built on surrender. When God allows the illusion of control to break, it often feels like your world is falling apart. But in reality, He is removing a burden you were never meant to carry. It frees you from chasing people's approval. It frees you from forcing relationships that drain you. It frees you from trying to be the savior of situations only God can redeem. You stop trying to fix people who don't want healing. You stop trying to hold on to those God is removing. You stop blaming yourself for outcomes you never had the power to determine. And in that surrender, something beautiful happens. You find peace again, not because life becomes predictable, but because God becomes enough. The hurt they caused stripped away the illusion that you were supposed to manage everything, and in losing that illusion, you gained a deeper, more unshakable trust in the one who actually holds your life together. The moment you stopped controlling was the moment God started rebuilding. Number 6, God allowed it to teach you how to love like Christ. Loving like Christ is beautiful to talk about, but incredibly hard to live. Anyone can love those who treat them well. Anyone can be kind to people who are kind in return. But the real test, the kind that shapes your soul and matures your spirit, comes when God allows someone to hurt you deeply, and then asks you to respond in a way that looks nothing like the world and everything like Jesus. This doesn't mean God wanted the pain. It means He wanted the transformation. The person who wounded you may have awakened emotions you didn't know were inside you. Anger, resentment, bitterness, distrust. These things rise to the surface not to condemn you, but to expose what Christ wants to heal. Because God isn't just trying to build your destiny. He's shaping your heart along the way, and nothing reveals the condition of your heart more clearly than how you respond to someone who has harmed you. Jesus understood this intimately. He healed the ear of a soldier who came to arrest Him. He prayed for the people who crucified Him. He restored Peter after betrayal. He dined with Judas even while knowing what Judas was planning to do. His love wasn't reactive, it was rooted in the Father's heart. And for you, God allowed the hurt because He is teaching you a higher kind of love. Not a weak love, not a love that tolerates abuse, but a love that refuses to let bitterness rule your spirit. A love that chooses forgiveness so that poison doesn't settle in your soul. A love that releases people into God's hands instead of carrying the weight of revenge. A love that reflects maturity, not misery. Forgiveness doesn't excuse their actions. It liberates your heart. Compassion doesn't deny the pain. It breaks the chain that binds you to it. Grace doesn't say, "What they did was fine." It says, "I refuse to let what they did shape who I become." Your calling requires a purified heart, not a hardened one. And sometimes the only way to refine that heart is through the heat of relational pain. God allowed someone to hurt you so you could learn a dimension of Christ's love you would never discover in easy seasons. Every time you choose grace over bitterness, you look more like Jesus. Every time you pray for someone who wronged you, heaven grows within you. Every time you release what they did, your spirit becomes lighter, freer, stronger. Their wound became the classroom. Christ became the teacher. And your heart became the canvas He is shaping into His likeness. Number 7. God allowed it to prepare a table for you in front of your enemies. When someone hurts you, it often feels like they won. It feels like they took something you can never get back. Your peace, your confidence, your trust, your time. But in the kingdom of God, pain is never the end of the story. God has a pattern woven throughout Scripture. He allows the attack, but He also guarantees the outcome, and the outcome is always victory for His people. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. David didn't write that in a season of comfort. He wrote it after surviving betrayals, battles, and threats that should have destroyed him. Yet God didn't just restore him. He elevated him where everyone who tried to harm him had to watch God's favor unfold right in front of them. That is how God works. He doesn't hide your blessing. He displays it. Joseph's brothers sold him, lied about him, and tried to erase him from his own destiny. But years later, God positioned Joseph as ruler of Egypt, and the very people who hurt him had to stand in front of him and witness what God had done, not because God wanted to humiliate them, but because he wanted Joseph to see that no human action could override God's plan. God is doing the same in your life. The people who thought they crushed you didn't know they were actually pushing you closer to purpose. The ones who rejected you didn't realize their absence was making room for greater blessings. The ones who spoke against you didn't expect God to use their negativity as fuel for your growth. Pain may have started the chapter, but elevation will finish it. Your table is being prepared, not in secret but in the presence of your enemies. In other words, God will bless you in a way that cannot be denied. He will restore you in a way that cannot be ignored. He will favor you in a way that reveals his hand clearly upon your life. They may have tried to break you, but God is going to build something out of your life so beautiful that the ones who hurt you will have no choice but to see it. Not for revenge, not for ego, but so they will know the God who vindicates, restores, redeems, and honors those who trust him. The pain was real, but so is the promise. The hurt was deep, but so is the healing. God is preparing. The betrayal happened, but so will the blessing. God allowed it because he planned to turn your wounds into a witness. And when he finishes, your testimony will make it clear. They did not ruin your life. They prepared the stage for God to reveal himself through it. Conclusion. When you look back at the moments that hurt you most, it's easy to focus on the pain, the betrayal, the confusion, and the unanswered questions. But as you step into clarity, you begin to realize something sacred. God was never absent. He was never indifferent. He was never silent without purpose. Every tear had meaning. Every heartbreak carried direction. Every wound held wisdom that comfort could never teach. The people who hurt you were not stronger than God's plan for your life. Their actions may have surprised you, but they did not surprise him. He saw the motives you couldn't see. He understood the consequences you didn't understand. And in his sovereignty, he allowed what he could have prevented because he knew what the pain would produce, what it would reveal, and who it would shape you into. You are not the same person you were before the hurt. You are wiser. You are stronger. You are more discerning. You pray deeper. You see clearer. You love with more intention. You forgive with more freedom. And you walk with a faith that is no longer fragile but fortified by experience. This entire journey wasn't about who wronged you. It was about the transformation God intended inside you. The hurt became the doorway. The struggle became the classroom. The loss became the turning point. And the God who allowed the pain is the same God who will redeem every piece of it. So let go of the idea that your story is broken. It's not broken. It's being written by a God who knows how to turn wounds into wisdom, valleys into victories, and betrayal into blessings. Your pain was never wasted. Your tears were never ignored. Your healing is not accidental. God is preparing you for a future you would never have reached without passing through these chapters. One day you will look back and see, with full clarity, God did not let them hurt you to destroy you. He let it happen to develop you, deepen you, and direct you. He let it happen because he loves you too much to let you stay where you were. And now, with everything you've learned, everything you've survived, and everything God is shaping inside you, you are ready for the next chapter. He has written with your name on it. Your story is moving toward glory. And God is not finished with you yet.